Welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Podcast, hosted by CRM technology and sales process expert Christopher Smith, talking with sales leaders that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Listen to find out how the best of the best achieve success with their team and CRM technology. And remember, unless you are the lead dog, the view never changes.
Welcome to another episode of Sales Lead Dog. Today we have joining us Phillip Gerard. Welcome to the show, Phillip.
Thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it very much. I'm excited to talk to you about this topic.
That's awesome. So, Phillip, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yeah, so I'm a long tenured sales leader. I've grown up in the electronic and electrical industries. And serviced a number of different customer segments. I'm currently Vice President of Sales for the Americas in the electrical group of Panduit. Panduit is the premier provider of wire management solutions into network and industrial electrical solutions. So we've got everything from cable management and data center accessories, et cetera. So one of the premier names, of course. But.
Oh yeah, anyone who works in data centers, anything even remote to that knows who Panduit is.
Yeah,
these are a very large company as well, correct?
Yeah, no, definitely we are, and I joined about a year ago, and the brand recognition that they had coming in, and the things I thought about them were not only confirmed but accentuated by just the innovation and what Panduit has done and continues to do as far as innovation in wire and wire management.
That's terrific. Tell us about thinking back over your career. Tell us about the person who's had the most impact on your success.
Well, I mean, I could point to a number of places. I mean, in my formative years, my dad was in sales, and my dad sold roofing and siding, and I remember doing sales calls with him on occasion, and so that certainly formed a lot of ideas and whatnot. So he was definitely formed early ideas about what sales was all about. I've had a number of mentors throughout my career that helped me learn at the next level. Really about not just the day-to-day selling and account level selling, but really developing sales leadership and skills in that regard. So I've really had quite a few mentors throughout the years.
That's terrific. I love hearing about people when they say, my dad was. It's the same for me. My dad was in IT, and it's nice to have that as your foundation. What's your favorite thing about your career?
Well, I mean, the industry that I've worked in has given a great deal to me, not just financially. I mean, I've had a lot of great success with in the industry. But I think the most rewarding thing is how I've developed as a person and how I've learned to understand, because it's not just the selling aspects of it, it's the people aspects of it that's attractive. And, even in early sales opportunities, it really was that attraction towards the people. So I'd say the most fulfilling thing for me is how I've grown as an individual and my, continued growth in just learning about, who are people and why do people do what they do, and when you're mentoring salespeople and when you're talking to customers, it's all about that sort of listening and learning and really understanding the people. So
awesome. I ask this question every. It's one of my favorite questions. What are the top 3 things that have helped you the most in your career?
So I would say one of the most significant things, and I know it's going to sound silly, but it was having children, because having children makes you have a different perspective on the impact that your behavior and the things that you were doing are having. That was the big influence on my leadership skills, is just recognizing that the same care that you put into speaking with your children, everything you say as a leader is also influential. So that was certainly a major change there. I've also had some executive coaching, and I don't know if I should mention the gentleman's name, but
If you want, that's fine.
yeah,
More than happy to plug people.
yeah, no, Stephen, I'll just leave it at Stephen for now, but he had a very, very strong impact on me. He taught me one of the most important things that I've learned that I try to pass on to my leaders that report into me now and people that I'm mentoring, which is slow down to speed up. That the result is better if you take the time to bring people into the fold and help, have them give the inputs and be part of the solution. And that was a big learning for me, because I think you have a tendency to, any one of us that are successful, we're successful because we're results oriented and we want to drive to get things done. And sometimes we forget that, look, there's a whole group of people around here who may not be at the same place you are. And if you take the time to get them there, bring them into the vision, and then kind of grow them, I think that's that's probably the biggest impact that's been in my career for sure.
That's awesome. You said something there that's pretty powerful. I'd like you to repeat it again, just to make sure people really understand that. The slow down to speed up. Could you say that again? Let's emphasize that. I think that's really an important concept.
Yeah, what that means is that if you get focused on the result, you can drive forward very rapidly, and you can drive forward very aggressively towards the goal, because you know that as a leader, at the end of the day, we're all here for the results. I mean, all the other stuff we do is important, and we got to be aligned with the culture, and we got to be aligned with the strategy and the plan. But if we're not delivering results, then it's all for naught. And so, for the key for delivering that result is to having the entire team around that. So sometimes you have to take a minute and say, I already know the direction that could get us there, or a direction. I don't even say the, because that's another thing that I've learned over the years, is that there's no the, there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no good, there's no bad. This is an approach. Will it work? Yes, it will. Okay, let's try it. But if you do that with your team, and you bring your team along, and not just your team of direct reports, when I mean any department, any external collaboration that you need in order to get done what you need to get done, if you take the time to understand their needs, take the time to understand their desires, it will slow you down in terms of delivering that result, but the result will be much more sustainable. And it will be much more positive, much more powerful, and the people around you will all feel that they're part of that change. And that was a very important lesson to me. And that's what I mean when I say slow down to speed up.
Terrific. If you, shifting gears here just a little bit, if you're with a group of your peers, you're all sharing stories, lots of laughter, smiles about the craziest sales story you have, what's your story?
There's one that always comes to mind. It was fun. We had a meeting with a customer, and we were trying to move them down a path, and they brought a vice president in who basically came in and said, look, I've got 15 minutes, wow me, and just kind of derailed the entire process we had planned and we were under. And even his team kind of looked, whoa, okay. Because we planned an hour, but he came in and kind of preempted and said, no, in 15 minutes, if I'm not ready to go, we're out of here. So we basically shifted our conversation to try to, because typically when I'm in a situation with talking to a customer, I want to ask a bunch of questions about what's important to you, and and how do I move this forward based on impact that I know that you'll feel. And we didn't get the chance to do that. So he just wanted us to, let's launch right into this. So we started going down the path of doing the explanation, and the fire alarm went off. And somebody had called in a bomb scare. A disgruntled employee called in a bomb scare. And every one of us had to leave the building and go to a designated place outside, and we had to stay there. So we had him now until this bomb scare was over, which was 2.5 hours. So we stood in the parking lot in a much more casual setting, and we got to ask the questions, talk through what we needed to. That was the best win of our lives. I remember I had one of our technical guys, Tony, with me, and we just, at the end of that call, we were high-fiving, so like we were about to crash and burn. We were gone. and we just got delivered the best gift ever, which was more time and an environment where he couldn't go anywhere anyway, so he might as well take some time and listen and talk. So
I need to remember that next time. If that ever happens to me, text one of my team members, hey, go outside, pull the fire alarm.
I wouldn't recommend that, but I certainly would say that was probably one of the most memorable sales calls ever.
Oh my, that's a great one. That's great. How did you get your start in sales, and what has that done, or how's that impacted your role as a sales leader?
Yeah, the truth is that as far back as I can remember, I mentioned that even as a lad, I went on sales calls with my father, and I watched him sell. And so when I was a kid, I would always, I remembered I had a job when I was a teenager, and I went and sold jewelry door to door with a team of people. They'd drop in a neighborhood, and you'd go and sell jewelry. It was jewelry that was crafted by special needs folks. So it was, a charity type thing. And so early on, I was doing selling. And I think that, I've always had a penchant for it. And, like whenever we had, fundraisers or things like that, I would always, go out and earn the most. And I would make sure I sold the most candy bars, or got the most raffle tickets or whatever, because I had that competitive spirit. I'm a middle child, so maybe that's some of the competitive drive comes from being in that center of the family, always trying to drive your position. So yeah, I would say it's kind of always been in my blood, and I've done it for from as far back as I can remember, and then I kind of when once you decide, okay, it's time to get into the workforce, and it's time to go do something, sales is just a natural migration for me.
What do you wish you were taught when you got that first job?
The power of questions. I think early on in everybody's career, we think that we need to explain. And what's much more powerful is when we get the customer to explain, when we ask the questions that allow them to understand that they have a genuine need and they understand the impact of that. That's something I think that, the sooner that a salesperson kind of can build that into their repertoire, the more successful they can be, because it's very, very powerful to ask just simple questions about, and there's tons of methods that teach that, customer-centric selling and spin and the question-based selling, and there's, any value-based selling, any number of those but the concept's all the same, which is really seek to understand before your advocation. Your advocation should be a very small piece, and it should be around they came to the realization they needed it on their own, and all you're doing is helping them get the solution. So that was something that in the early career we were always brushing up on. How do I talk about the features and benefits and that sort of thing. And I learned very quickly, it's like, how do I equate this to the customer's business? And where I learned that is we had a select group of people, which I was one of, who were trained and authorized to do a total cost of ownership analysis that when I worked with an electronics distributor. And because of that training, the whole thing was, let's go in and ask them questions about their operations so you can learn where are the points where you can provide, supply chain services that are going to help them. So us as a distributor, can solve those problems, but we can also put a number on it. And there was a financial analysis to say, this is what you gain as a result of doing that based on the values we bring. And that's when the light kicked on for me. It was like, man, those weren't selling opportunities. People were bringing me in to talk to them about their operation. And I got more powerful selling opportunities out of that than I did out of, ever sitting down in what was considered a sales call. So,
right.
That's probably the thing that I would say is most, will give the most impact to young salespeople is just understand that the power of questions and, asking questions to get a sale. It seems awkward until you learn it, and then it seems so natural.
Was it a tough decision for you to transition from sales to being a sales leader?
It was, and for the reasons I talked about earlier about, that slow down to speed up concept was, I proved my worth as a sales individual, and I was a high performance individual. And then as I started growing, I just, I wanted my career to advance, and I wanted, more of those sales positions. But I have to say that early in my career, I was not that slow down to speed up guy. I was, guys, we're going in this direction and we're going. And, I received a lot of feedback. You asked about mentors. A couple of my very strong mentors through my career, really spent the time explaining to me, like, you're getting tremendous results, but you're leaving a wake behind you. And you don't need to do that. And that was I think kind of a really a turning point for me. But so I always had my eye towards, doing more and growing my career. It's making that change, from the individual contributor. Well, you've got to now understand that it's the power of the team that matters, not the power of you, the result you're delivering. And if you can get everybody on your team that much better, that's going to be a reflection. And I think part of that too is that you've got to change what you consider to be the result you're delivering. So things like employee engagement scores and employee satisfaction are right up there with revenue and profit and pipeline and targets and things like that. I mean, because if that team feels strongly about where they are as a team from a chemistry perspective, they're going to deliver that result for you. So, and it's not like you sit back and wait for the result. You still got to drive to the result, but encouraging, mentoring, and developing the team and their skill set makes your result happen.
Is there something, when you got that first leadership job, is there something you strongly believe that you now know was just flat out wrong?
Yeah. I mean, again, and it is in that same vein. I was making decisions and micromanaging things that I didn't need to be engaged and involved in, and frankly, I could see the impact that it had after the fact. It would have been nice to kind of know it ahead of time, but you know how it works is you've got to skin your knees before you realize that, okay, I'm not going to step over that anymore. So
I think that's
one
of the
that was
toughest
kind of the
things
early. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I talked over you. Go ahead.
No, I just said that was just some of the early learnings that you get that big shot, you're in, you get your chance and you're in there, and all of a sudden you go, I'm not getting the result I thought I would. I thought I would just get up here and show them what to do. No, not quite.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a tough thing for most people when they transition into a leadership role is understanding that they need to give people space. The micromanaging really is not going to help. I think that's a common mistake.
Well, I think too that that goes back into like talent development and team selection and that sort of thing. Because now what you start to realize is that not everybody's going to be the same at the same things. They're all going to bring different strengths to the party, and quite frankly, we had a program at one of the places I worked. It was called Pathways to Leadership, and it was a management simulation process. It was a 3-day process that was grueling for the individuals. And you were either nominated by your leader or you asked to be part of it because you aspired to be in leadership. And I was one of the facilitators and raters for this. So our job was to make a rating of the individual. Are they ready now, ready a year from now, or not recommended for leadership? I saw a lot of people come into that thought they wanted to be in leadership and said, hey, if this simulation is real in any way at all, I'd rather be an individual contributor. And that was a lot of the learning where I started to understand is you got to be able to separate the difference between those people that may be moderate performers, but have greater capability in leadership or in other roles in the company. And then you got those pure, hey, this is an individual who's going to be an individual contributor for the long haul. And that's not a bad thing. Let's make sure they're happy, make sure they're motivated, get them the tools they need, enable them. But let's not worry about, hey, they're your best performer, so they're your next sales leader. They may not be. They may not be fit for that at all.
Yeah, I think that's a key component of being a leader. What are those attributes you look for when you're thinking about nominating someone or taking them through a grooming process for a leadership role? What do you look for?
So for me, the impact that people have around them is a pretty clear indicator. And look, this is not in any way meant to disparaging about those go get 'em salespeople, but you know that there are those really solid performers that do leave a little bit of a wake, and they when the organization doesn't move to the direction they want, they get excited. And salespeople are expressive by nature, and they let their opinions be known, and so they can really cause some friction within the organization if they don't drive properly. So I think if I'm looking at the difference between there's other people that as they're operating and acting, they're asking that question like, well, look, I've run across the same thing multiple times. How can I solve that problem so we never have to deal with it again? Those are your sort of leaders. I think the early indicator of who are the people that need to be groomed for leadership, and who are the ones that you coach and mentor to get the constituency group as best that you can behind them, and not be too disruptive, but also make sure you turn them loose and let them be the hunter that they are. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. When you are, one of the things I would like to talk about with my guests are success habits. What are your success habits that you try to pass down to your team?
There's a number of them. I think first and foremost is look at the things that are going to be impactful. Try to understand what the things that are going to be impactful and spend your time there, because there's this quadrant system that somebody introduced me to early on with the axes of urgent and important. And there's this quadrant of things that are not urgent, but they're very important, where people spend a limited amount of their time. And I've actually got a graph that I share with people, and say, look, if you're building a strategy for your account or for your territory or whatever you're doing, there's only so many things that you're going to be able to get done in the day. And if you want to go home fulfilled and say, I got something done and I felt great, you're going to need to force yourself into that category of not urgent, but important. And, the unfortunate thing, where we have to spend our time is in the urgent and important. That's I got to get this quote out, this expedite has to happen. I need to do this thing or I'm going to lose my customer. Those you got to service. The problem is that we also spend a lot of time in the not important, but urgent, because they're coming at us and we can check the box and get that good feeling about, okay, I got that done. I feel good that I solved that problem. And then you look back and say, but did that help me forward my strategy? So I spend a lot of time with my leadership team making sure that they have a sound strategy. And then I ask them, look at the activities that you're spending your time on. Are they forwarding your strategy? Or are they just reactions to things that are happening? And as people move more toward that quadrant of the not urgent but important, I watch them succeed much more.
As you know, our firm is really big around sales process, as well as other processes throughout the organization enabled by CRM technology. Panduit just went through a major project to re-engineer your sales process. Can you talk about what was it that triggered that, and what some of the business issues were that were driving that process?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to thank you, Chris. I know we didn't end up with an engagement for you to do some of the work for us, because we have a pretty strong internal team, but the consultation that you and I had was extremely helpful. And I do appreciate you kind of looking over how I was thinking about it. And I've done I've done full CRM implementations at 2 other companies. This company had a CRM. The issue that was interesting is that we really weren't using it as anything other than kind of a repository for information that wasn't being utilized in any way. So the biggest issue that I see companies, the mistake that people make is they look and say, I'm going to put in a CRM because I've got a sales problem. And I always say, solve the sales problem first and understand, where is there a lack of discipline? What does your sales process actually look like? What are the things that lead you to winning? And then have your CRM reflect your sales process. And if you do it the other way around, you're fooled into thinking that I'm going to turn this CRM in and all of a sudden my pipeline's going to go up and I'm going to be winning more business. And the fact of it is that what you're going to do is you're going to have a clear reflection of the poor discipline and the poor process you have already. So so when I got to Panduit, our network infrastructure group has a very strong utilization of the CRM, and not just the CRM, but all of the tools, Marketo, and the early digital customer acquisition aspects of it, inside sales using tools to do account-based marketing and lead generation, lead follow-up, et cetera. And they had a very strong adoption of it. Their business is a little bit different, more project-based, so it lent itself to that more naturally. But we also have lots of projects, and just order of magnitude, our business is a very large private company. But we do this in little orders at a time, and so smaller $5,000-$10,000 orders are very, very important to us. But we can't track and manage each one of them. So you got to have a system that understands what's the inertia behind that. So basically what I did is I took the best practices of the past that I had, but I didn't, I also see leaders make the mistake of coming in and saying, I did this before, therefore we're going to do this here. It's like, no, I'm going to actually try to understand what are the nuances of our sales process. Where do we succeed? So I spent a lot of time in my early part of my career here at Panduit, traveling around, talking to people, listening to the customer, like, how do they interact with us? What does that look like? And then going back and looking and saying, how did that now get reflected in our pipeline? And then just really trying to understand that. So then we built out the process around how do we want it to happen and what are the connection points. So best practice for me from a CRM is if people have to operate within the CRM to get things done, then they're going to be more apt to be in there working. So you've got to kind of drive the process to happen within the tool, rather than you're out here working the process and you come in and reflect it in the tool. It's like, okay, now I'm asking people to duplicate their effort. So how do I make those connection points in CRM that if you have to do this, like if I want to make an engineering request, I make it in CRM and it goes to the person in engineering, that it makes the evaluation, does the checklist to see if everything's there, and all of the interaction and transactions are happening there. So now we do things like connection points of email and telephone and other things, so that, the key for me is we don't want to make it a burden for people. We want their natural selling process to be happening, and in the background, they're connecting that information to the CRM, so that we can, because where it's really going is predictive measures. I've got this massive pipeline, but how much of it do I really believe I'm going to close within certain windows? So we're doing things like probability around closure window, and if something is 80% probable and it's going to close within this window, we didn't have the means to be able to say, well, okay, was the proposal done? Have there been iterations of pricing, or and if we don't see those things in an opportunity, then you can pretty much be rest assured that you're saying you're going to close it in 60 days and you got an 80% probability. That's most likely not going to happen, because you haven't done any of the steps in the system that that demonstrates that we've been even quoting this. That's the type of stuff that's where we're moving towards, is that let's get a little bit more predictive analysis around forecasting. Let's get a little bit better about being able to come to the company in an S&OP process and be able to say, I have this level of confidence in this value. These other things we're nurturing and working, but let's make sure we start thinking about producing these products, because we have a high degree of confidence we're going to win them.
Everything you said is spot on. I wanted to yell amen like 5 times while you were talking, because that's exactly what our approach is. And I'm just a huge advocate around everything you said, that it really is there to probably not going to repeat this as elegantly as you said it, but technology should be there, CRM technology, to really support the process of the person is doing naturally. That it shouldn't be a burden. It should just be part of their normal flow of what they need to get done, and the tool's just making it easier for me to do my job.
No, absolutely, yeah. And again, I remember our early conversation when I was, I a little intimidated to come to you and say, look, this is how I'm thinking about it. Am I like way off base? And you kind of affirmed for me that no, that's the right approach. And but the steps that you walked me through in that process, and the way that you questioned me, like I was just talking about, hey, are you thinking about this? And okay, what are you doing in this area? And show me this piece. And as you and I were walking through it, you gave me the confidence to say, okay, my experience tells me this is right, and somebody with your expertise is also kind of looking at that. So I appreciated that, and I think we were very like-minded in the approach that we were taking in that. So
No, very much so. And our firm has we've really developed a specialty around coming in and rehabilitating CRMs that have failed or just not, they're what you described earlier about when you came into Panduit with your group's CRM, where it's a repository of information that's really not being utilized. And you can transform an organization when you do it the right way. The way you described it is spot on. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So thinking about, I'm going to ask everyone this question. I'm going to ask it you a little differently. When you were a salesperson, when it came to CRM, did you love it or did you hate it?
Well, when I grew up in sales, the CRM wasn't a thing. Goldmine was out, and that was our ACT, which was more of a kind of a contact database. I remember early on thinking to myself that if I don't attack this in an organized way, I'm never going to be successful. So we didn't have the CRM tools, in my early career. So, I remember, and frankly, spreadsheets were, it was a thing, but not like a thing. I remember notebooks and, other paper means and, things that I used to the best of my ability to try to follow that process. But to me, it was always around trying to understand what's the repeatability. I would have to say that if in my early career, I wish I had CRM. What a great tool, because I remember like the Monday morning meetings when you get called out to, all right, what are you working on? That kind of thing. It'd be nice to be able to just, print a report and show that. And instead of, leafing through papers and trying to, this is what I'm working on. So I would have loved it if I had it. And in the places that I have had it in my leadership roles, I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But with the caveat that I only love it when it's implemented correctly and it reflects your sales process versus it's a repository.
Amen. Amen. I'm going to sneak one amen in there. Well, we are at the end of our time here on Sales Lead Dog. I really appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed listening to you. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is a great way. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Please do me one favor though and put a note in there of why, because I do get requests that don't say anything, and I look at the profile and don't understand the connection point, and I don't connect there because I'm not looking to just grow my connection points. I want to actually have meaningful connections with people. So I always ask that, just if there's no note in there, I don't understand what we're trying to connect around, unless I know you, of course, then I'm connecting because I know you. But that's probably the best way in my profile. So, if you search for, I'm in South Carolina, I'm with Panduit, Phillip Gerard, I'm pretty findable on LinkedIn.
That's terrific. Well, again, thank you for being on Sales Lead Dog.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Chris.
As we end this discussion on Sales Lead Dog, be sure to subscribe to catch all our episodes. On social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Watch the videos on YouTube, and you can also find our episodes on our website at impellercrm.com/Sales Lead Dog. Sales Lead Dog is supported by Impeller CRM, delivering objectively better CRM for business, guaranteed.